Hi, my name is Marco van Wieren and I'm the developer of the WPO365 plugins for WordPress. Plugins that help you implement exciting features of the Microsoft Cloud in your WordPress website. And in today's video, I would like to show you just how easy it is to implement role-based access control for your WordPress website based on Entra ID Groups, Entra ID user attributes or app roles. Whether you wish to dynamically assign a WordPress role to a user when that user signs in or when you are synchronizing users, whether you wish to restrict access to certain pages or the whole site, or whether you wish to redirect the user to a specific destination. Whatever your use case, if it's about making the decision in WordPress based on a user's membership of an Entra ID group, I think WPO365 has you covered. Well, let's get started. For today's video, I am again using my website at staging.wpo365connect.com. And I have already installed the WPO365 login plugin and I configured its single sign-on feature. And I've configured single sign-on using the XAML 2.0 protocol. I could have also chosen to configure the OpenID Connect protocol, but it doesn't really matter. And if there are differences between the two protocols, then I will highlight those throughout the video. So if you have configured OpenID Connect based single sign-on, then please continue watching. I will make sure that I address the differences. So let's return to the feature dashboard. And if I scroll down, then I can see that there is a feature for roles and access to configure role-based access control. And I can also see that it's a premium option. And it means that I need to install any of the premium plugins. And for today's video, I will install the roles and access plugin, which is basically the most cost-effective premium plugin to enable just this role-based access control feature. So let's return to the website and let's quickly go to the install plugins. I've already added the plugin and I will now activate it. And if I then return to my feature dashboard and if I scroll down, then I can see that roles and access feature is now enabled and I can continue to configure it. I can also select roles and access from the drop-down menu. Let's do that. This brings me already to the configuration of the roles and access feature, as you can see here. But before I do that, I actually want to update my XAML 2.0 single sign-on configuration. Let's first of all have a look. If I go to my plugin self-test, and if I would run the self-test, meaning I'm logging in with my account and the plugin will basically test a couple of use cases. Then I can see if I scroll down that at one point my XAML response does not yet contain the groups claim. And if it does contain the groups claim, then WPO365 can save itself a round trip to Microsoft Graph to obtain this information for each user when that user logs in. So therefore, it's really handy to just update the XAML response that Microsoft sends back to the website whenever a user signs in successfully, authenticates successfully with Microsoft. Then this group information is available and then all the rules that you can configure using the WPO365 plugin can use that information. So let's do that. I have opened a new browser tab and navigated to entra.microsoft.com. And here I will look up under Enterprise Apps, under Entra ID, under Enterprise Apps, the application that I've created for this video demo. And that I've used to configure my XAML protocol, my XAML-based single sign-on. That must be this one. And if I go here to the single sign-on feature, then I can here choose to edit the attributes and claims. So let's do that. I click edit, and here I can click to add a group claim. Let's do that. Let's say that I want all groups to be included, and all groups means security groups, Microsoft 365 groups, directory roles, etc. And what I want is the group ID, so that's correct as well this way. Let's save this updated configuration, and basically let's close the tab and let's return to my website, my WordPress website, and let's simply rerun first of all the self-test to see whether the groups claim now is included. As you can see, I was redirected to Microsoft very quickly and very quickly returned here as well. And I'm scrolling down and I can see that the test case, whether the groups claim now is included, has passed. It's okay. So I can scroll up and here I can view the sample response. So let's have a quick look. If I click view, then I can see that here is the groups claim, and here are all the IDs of the groups that I'm a member of. So my sample response now contains the groups claim, and that's a nice way of starting the role-based access control configuration. So let's close this. If I scroll down a little bit further, then I can see that there are two more test cases that test for compatibility, whether or not your configuration is prepared for the roles and access and audiences feature. One time it tests whether the plugin is able to retrieve the group information in a delegated fashion, basically when a user signs in. Well, we've just seen that the sample response contains the groups claim, so we're fine for that. We can get this information when a user interactively signs in to your WordPress website. But there are a couple of use cases when that is not sufficient. If you choose to configure WPO365 user synchronization, or if you integrate with the Entra ID application provisioning service, and you let Microsoft push down users to your WordPress application, then there is no logged-in user available, and then WPO365 needs application level access to Microsoft Graph to get a list of the groups that the user is a member of when there is no logged-in user available. So, for the sake of completeness, let's also make sure that that is working as expected as well. I have returned to the Entra portal, entra.microsoft.com, and under Entra ID I will now register my application, not as an enterprise application, as a service principal, but as an app principal. I will create a new app registration. So I click to register a new application and I say this is a video demo app only. Single tenant is fine, and I do not enter a redirect URI. Nobody's signing into this application. It's really and purely only for app only access. So I register this application and I will configure the API permissions that I need. And the permission that I need would be a Microsoft Graph permission, an application level permission to read the group members, all groups, and I add this permission. And I can actually remove the delegated permission, which I do. I remove that. And now as a global administrator, I grant admin consent. So let's do that as well. If that link appears grayed out to you, then you do not have the permissions to click it and you would need help from a global administrator. Now we must continue and configure a so-called secret, which is kind of the password that the application can use. The application in our case being the WordPress website and basically WPO365, which is installed in your website, that needs to authenticate with Entra ID to gain access to Microsoft Graph. So let's create a new secret. And let's add the secret. And note that you can also set a different expiration date for that secret. And once I add this secret, there are a couple of things that I need to pay attention to. First of all, I need to copy the value and not the secret ID. And I will copy this and I will paste this on the corresponding page in the WPO365 configuration. But before I do that, there's another thing that I would like to highlight, and that's the expiration. Once the secret expires, it can't be used and your plugin basically will stop working. The WPO365 plugin won't be able to retrieve group information from Microsoft Graph. So it's important to note this date and make sure that you renew this secret simply by creating a new secret and copying the value, much in the same way as I'm doing right now. And then again, take this value of the secret, return to the plugin, and here we need to go to the plugins integration page. And here on the integration page, we find a section for application access, which we can enable. And here we need to paste the application ID and the application secret. Well, the secret I've just copied, so let's paste that first. Let's return to Entra and let's copy also the application ID. And I'll find that on the overview page. Here, there's the application ID and I need to copy that and I'll return again to the WPO365 configuration and I'll also paste the secret here. You can also see that once you've pasted the application ID, you get a convenient link that if you click this link will immediately take you to the Entra portal and open the registered application that we've actually just been looking at. Let's have a quick look. Here you can see it opens the registered application in Entra portal, just as a convenience. Let's save this configuration. We see a small warning that we may need to also refresh any server-side cache. For me, for staging WPO365 Connect, I have not configured any, so just return to the self-test and click to start the self-test to see whether my application level integration with Microsoft Graph is working. And well, at the moment it is not. It states that I need to also add user read all permissions. So let's quickly return to Microsoft Entra, to our registered application, and let's have a look at the API permissions page again. And let's add another permission for Microsoft Graph, an application permission for users read all. User read all, there it is. We add the permission and I will grant admin consent and confirm. That has been added and I should now be able to return to the plugin and basically repeat the self-test one more time. I will scroll down and look for the roles and access section. Now I can see that get a user's Azure AD group memberships with application permissions actually has passed this test, and if I click view, I can see the raw data that has been returned. I'm happy with that, so I click to close this. There's one thing that I actually noticed now when I look at this. If I look here, I see only a couple of groups. So let's close that. And if I compare that with the SAML response, I notice that I saw a lot more groups. And most likely that is because there is a setting that tells me what groups should be returned when I get groups, when WPO365 gets groups from Microsoft Graph. Let's return to the plugins, roles and access page. And if I scroll down here, I can see that there is indeed an option to retrieve all Entra ID and Microsoft 365 groups. So I check that and I save the configuration. And I quickly return to the plugin self-test and repeat the self-test one more time. And if I now scroll down to the roles and access test cases and again view at the result, I can see that there are a lot more groups now returned. So basically I could say that the plumbing that WPO365 needs to implement role-based access control has now finished. We are now able to start with the definition of rules, to dynamically assign WordPress roles, to restrict access, or to implement some kind of redirection to a specific target in WordPress when a user signs in. So let's continue with that. Let's start and create a simple rule that will assign the role of WordPress author to members of the Entra ID group called Communications, which I created previously for exactly that purpose. To configure role-based access, I would need to go to the Roles and Access configuration page. The first section on the Roles and Access configuration page, let me define the authentication scenario, the protection level of the website. If I'm happy when users are only required to sign in with Microsoft when they access the backend of the website, so WP admin, then I can leave the authentication scenario to internet. It basically means that the front end of the site is available to the general public. However, if I want users to sign in before they access any of the content published on this website, then I would need to choose here intranet. If authentication scenario is set to intranet, WPO365 will make sure that users are first sent to Microsoft to sign in before they can access the content published on this website. But for today's example, I stick to the internet authentication scenario. So let's continue to the roles and access section of this configuration page. By default, WPO365 will not attempt to update a user's WordPress roles when that user is signing in. Therefore, we need to change the update scenario from skip and choose either add a new role to the existing roles of the user or replace existing roles with the roles that follow from the rules that we define here. Let's choose replace for this example. And let's scroll down a little bit. Let's have a look. I want to create a mapping from an Entra ID group to a WordPress role. I want to assign the role of author to any user who is a member of the communications group. For that purpose, I would first need to know the ID of that group. And therefore, I will return to Entra Portal. And in Entra Portal, I will have a look at the groups, at all groups, and look at the communications group that you can see here. And here I'll need to basically copy the object ID. So I click to copy the ID of that group and then return to WordPress. And here I need to paste the ID and then click the plus. Don't forget that. It's very often forgotten and then the rule simply is not persisted. So with this in place, I would need to scroll down and save the updated configuration. Let's have a look and test whether my role assignment is actually working. I'll first have a look at the users. As you can see, the website currently only has one user, which is me, the administrator. Now I would need to test with the user who is a member of basically this communications group for which I've created a new mapping. So I look at the members and I can see that Ellen Demo here is a member of the group. So what I will do is I will start a new tab with the profile of Ellen, visit the website staging WPO365connect.com, but try and access the site's admin area. This will send me to Microsoft and I'm asked to sign in. I would pick my account. So I enter the password and I click sign in. Yes, you can stay signed in. And now Ellen is returned to the website's admin dashboard. What I can already see here is that Ellen is able to create content for this website. So most likely the mapping did what we expected it to do. But I will return to my view as administrator. I will refresh the list of users, and I can see that the plugin created a new user for Ellen, and that this new user indeed has been assigned the role of author. For my next example, I have actually removed the user of Ellen from my WordPress user list. And also, if I continue to WPO365 to the configuration, I have removed on the roles and access page the mapping for the groups claim. What I want to do now is actually show you a different way of assigning the author role to Ellen. Basically, I want to assign the author role to Ellen if she would have a property, a user attribute, department with a value of communications. So let's add that. But now we need to wonder, where is this property coming from? This property is basically coming from the SAML response. So we need to ensure that the SAML response would include the department property. And let me first save that before I continue. And before now I go to update my SAML response, let's have a quick look at Ellen's profile and at the properties of her to make sure that she's indeed working in the communications department. So she has a department with the value set to communication. So that seems to be as expected. Then let's continue to the enterprise app that we created to enable the SAML 2.0 based SSO. And if I go to the single sign-on page of this enterprise application, and if I look at the attributes and claims, then I can see that here is no department claim yet, but I can add a new claim. I can call it department. What you name it here is free. Whether you set a namespace or not is up to you as well. And I can link that to the department property of the user, so user department. Happy with that, and I save that. And now I will return to WPO365, and actually let's first of all make sure that this property is coming through. So I go to the plugin self-test and I run the self-test. And obviously this is for my user, so I would see a different response as Ellen would receive, or the plugin would receive on behalf of Ellen actually. And let's see whether we have a department claim here. Well, I don't see it yet, so it might be a matter of just giving it a bit of time. Let's have one more look. Let's see whether this is the famous cloud second that we need to wait for. And have another look. Still not there, so let's wait a little bit more. I have waited a little bit more, but then I realized that my user that I'm using here for the self-test was not assigned to a department. So I've assigned the user to a department, and when I now run the self-test, and when I look at the SAML response, I can see that the department claim is coming through, and in my case, the value is IT. I have to assume that for Ellen, the value of communications would come through, and that when she now would sign in, that a new WordPress user would be again created for her, and that she would receive the role of WordPress author. So let's test that. Let's return to the tab of Ellen, and let's sign in with Microsoft. And then I can see that actually here she can create new content. Actually, let's sign out one more time. This is an internet site. So if I return to the administrator view, and if I go to the login and logout configuration page, I could define that after logging in, I would like the user to land at the WP admin site instead of at the home page. Let's change that. Let's save the configuration. Let's one more time return to Ellen. Let's sign in with Microsoft. And now she lands at the dashboard for the website as an author. So things seem again to be working. as expected. I can have a quick look as administrator at the user list. And here I can see that the new user exists for Alan with the role of author. Now I would like to restrict access to WordPress admin, to administrators of the website and authors. Anybody else should be denied access. And I can do that, for example, by creating a list of allowed Entra groups. So in this list, I would need to, first of all, allow the users of the communications group. So let's have a quick look. Groups, all groups. Let's scroll down to the communication groups. And let's copy the object ID of the communications group and paste it. And click plus to add it. Plus, I also want the admins to be able to sign in. If I would prevent admins from signing in, I would almost exclude myself, for example. So that's something that you want to be really careful with. So let's have another look at all the groups. And I believe there is a group with WordPress admins. So let's copy that object ID as well. Just make sure that I'm a member, which is the case. So I take that ID as well and click plus again. So now members of these two groups can sign in. The rest will be denied access. Plus, if you're in this group or if your department is communications, you will be assigned the WordPress role of author. Happy with that? Let's save the configuration. Let's return to the tab of Alan and let's sign out. And let's make sure that he can still sign in. Well, that's the case. So that's great. That's working as expected. Let's have another look. Let's copy this URL. And let's have a look at whether John Demo currently is able to sign in. So I paste the URL. This will take me to Microsoft. It will sign or attempt to sign in John Demo. But John is not in either group. So access is denied. And you see this small notification on a default page. You can also see that there are some extra parameters not in group added to the URL, stating basically also the error information if you want to customize the login and basically error page experience. You have seen that it's fairly easy to restrict access to your WordPress website to users of specific Entra ID groups. Can the same be done to specific WordPress pages and posts? Well, the answer is yes, using audiences. An audience is a group of users that is dynamically populated by WPO365 with members of one or more Entra ID groups. So let's enable that feature. But before I configure it, let's also then create multiple Entra ID groups that help me build an example. So let's create a new group, a security group, and let's call that group Europe with users from Europe. And let's leave everything as default. Say create. And let's create a new group, security group with the name of the Americas. And let's also create that group. So we have two new groups, all groups, and let's now assign two users, one user to each group. Let's say that Alan is a member of the first one. Select. So let's refresh that. Alan is now a member of the Americas group. Let's return to all groups. Let's have a look at the Europe group. And just need to find it. Probably also need to refresh this list one more time. There it is. So, and let's add John Demo as a member to the Europe group. Demo, there we go. There's John. Let's add John, select him. And let's refresh that. So John is a member of the Europe group. I am back at the roles and access configuration page. And the first thing I need to change here is the authentication scenario. Here I would like to change it to intranet. This basically means that users before they access any post or page of my intranet, or basically of my closed user group, will need to authenticate with Microsoft. And that also then will help me, or help WPO365 basically, to assign the users to the right audience. So I select their intranet and I scroll down to the bottom of the page where I can continue to configure the audiences. So let's create a new audience. Let's call it Europe, and let's look up the ID of the Europe group. There we go. I copy the object ID and I'll paste it here, and I click plus to add the group. I do the same for the Americas group. Also copy the object ID and I will give it a name, Americas, and I enter the ID. And you can see I can enter multiple IDs of multiple Entra ID groups. So it's not a one-to-one connection, even though I am establishing it here as a one-to-one connection, but that's only for the example. I like to keep it as simple as possible. But I think one of the beauties of audiences is that you can actually have a one-to-many relationship between the audience and the Entra ID groups on the other side. So let's click plus to add this audience as well. And let's save the configuration now. Now let's create a new post. And let's call that Americas only. And at the bottom of this page, you can see that I have an option to make this page available, or basically restrict access to this post to the audiences. And let's select Americas here. And let's publish the post. And let's view the post. I cannot even see it at the moment. Now that's not good. I'm the administrator. So let's go to WPO365 to the roles and access configuration. Let's scroll down to audiences and let's say that excluded roles, let's add there the administrator role. Basically for all post types. Let's add that as a rule and save the configuration. Now let's have a look at the posts, and I can see the post here. So that's already a good sign. And now I can view the post. So let's have a look. Do you still remember who is in which group? Americas would have been Ellen. So if I go to the tab of John, and before I do, I should basically have copied actually the URL of this post. So let's view the post, let's copy the URL and let's return to John's profile. And now I expect a few things. I've changed it to an intranet, so I expect the user to be signed in. And then I expect the user not to be able to view this page. I get an access denied. I guess from earlier on, I actually still have a rule that prevents certain users from signing in. So let's have another look at the roles and access configuration. And let's go here a little bit to the top. I have here a list of allowed Entra ID groups, and John is not allowed to sign in. So if I just simply remove those roles here, or basically those groups, from the list of Entra groups that are allowed to sign in, scroll down and save the configuration, and now return to John's profile. I hope I didn't lose you by now. Let's sign in again with Microsoft. Now I expect to be able to sign in. But since this page is not available to the audience where John is a member of, he will not be able to view this content. You will see an basically 404 error, the page does not exist. Let's return to the admin view. Let's have a quick look at the users list. And here I can see that for demo at WPO365.com, a new user has been created with the default role of subscriber, because no other rule basically applied. And that this user was assigned to the audience of Europe. Alan at the moment, however, is not assigned to an audience because he did not yet sign in. So let's do the same test. Let's have a quick look. Let's copy the URL for this specific post. Let's look at the tab for Alan. Let's try and navigate to the page and let's refresh that. But she's still signed in because of her tab. So let's try and log out and let's sign back in with Microsoft. And let's now try and navigate to the page. And she can now see the page. Before I go, there is one more scenario that I wish to share with you. If I return to the Roles and Access configuration page, then you can see that I changed the level of protection for this site to Internet. Basically means that the content of this site can be viewed by anyone. There is no requirement for a user to sign in. If I now scroll further down to the Audiences configuration, which is enabled, then you can see that there are currently no audiences defined, because they anyway don't work in an internet context. So let's save this configuration and let's create a new post. And let's say that this post is supposed to be for users who are logged in users. And if I now look at the bottom of my basically sidebar here, then you can see that audiences are still available, but because I'm in internet mode, I can choose to make this page private. So let's select that and let's publish this page. And let's view the post. And let's copy that post. Let's now return to, for example, a profile of John. And let's sign out. Still signed in from a previous example. Let's go to the front end of the site. And now I can see that I don't need to log in. I can access the site without the need to sign in with Microsoft. And now I go to the page that is specifically for users who logged in, that I've marked private before. Now I get an error. The page cannot be found. I don't want that actually. I want that if I go back to the admin view, and if I go here to WPO365 to the Roles and Access configuration page, I would like to configure that the response for visitors that are requesting a page that requires a logged in user is not 404, but I want them to be redirected, for example, to Microsoft. So I save the configuration. I will again switch to the profile of Gion, and I will try and refresh this page. And now you can see I was very quickly redirected to Microsoft, signed in, and now I can view the page that required the user to sign in before viewing the content. And this brings me to the end of this video. There is still a lot more to tell about role-based access control with the WPO365 plugin for WordPress, but I think for now it's sufficient. I think this covers the basics, and if you have any questions or if you're interested to learn more about this feature, or if you're stuck for any reason, then please click the question mark at the bottom of your screen. And this will take you to the support for request form on our website. And when you're there anyway, then please make sure to visit our website and learn more about all the exciting features that our plugins offer when it comes to integrating the exciting features of the Microsoft Cloud into your WordPress website. And last but not least, make sure that you visit our page in the WordPress plugins directory and that you leave a review so that you can tell others about your experience and why you recommend it and why you give it 5 stars. Thank you very much.